He was known for ruling during war, plague, invasion, and political instability, and of course his famous book, Meditations. Beyond the power, the money, the prestige, he actually seemed to be a pretty good guy. So how could a guy who's born into wealth, he's literally the emperor, the most powerful person on the planet, how could he not be arrogant, super egotistical in that state? What if you could speak to Marcus Aurelius himself? We live in the world of AI that's bringing new possibilities we never even thought of every single day. And today I've got a new one for you. I'm making avatars, AI avatars, of major historical figures I care about. Today we have up Marcus Aurelius. I made an AI avatar feeding it everything Marcus Aurelius ever wrote. I added all primary sources, all secondary sources, everything we know about him and his life. The avatar is here to personify him as if we're able to talk to him himself while still maintaining some academic integrity. So we'll know whether it can't speak to something, stuff like that. But even beyond this, we're going to be diving into the story of who Marcus Aurelius is. How has he withstood the test of time? Because at the end of the day, that's the big accomplishment here. I'm sure there have been thousands, if not millions, of people who all have incredible stories and incredible things that they've accomplished. But how many of those do we not even know of? Marcus Aurelius, however, he's someone that has withstood the test of time, that we can hear about again and again. And I don't know about you, but his meditations, his main writing, has made a profound impact on me in my life. If you don't know him, he's a Stoic, ruled the great Roman Empire, led many armies on the battlefield, won many wars. So let's see how he did it. He was born on April 26th, 121 after Jesus, so a couple thousand years ago in Rome. And he died at 180 at about the age of 58. He ruled the Roman Empire. He was emperor for 19 of those years, and his full birth name was Marcus Antoninus. He was known for ruling during war, plague, invasion, and political instability, and of course his famous book, Meditations. So I've opened it up here first with just a few quotations. The way we're going to go about this is I'm going to tell his life story from birth to death. And intermingled in that process, I've put in questions that I'm going to ask his AI avatar. These are questions I've thought of, I've researched. I thought that they could be something he could speak to and would be relatable to you and me. I want to do another episode where I answer the questions you guys put in the chat. So comment down below some questions you would want to ask Marcus Aurelius. And with that, let's get into it. These are just some quotes to get your mind thinking. Who is this guy? Where is he coming from? And what will we be focusing on today? He says, when you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. And lastly, from my grandfather Varus, I learned good morals and the government of my temper. It's obvious he was a thoughtful man. If you've even looked at Meditations, you know it took some time for him to write this stuff down. It wasn't shallow, it was pretty deep. So my first question that I'm excited to ask his AI avatar, if there's one thing that Marcus Aurelius can speak to about the human condition, based on his life, what is that thing? His avatar says that the strongest candidate is the difficulty of governing oneself under conditions one does not control. In his later reign, especially the years of war and strain apparently, when much of the Meditations was likely written. Here's some quotes. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. And this you have the power to revoke at any moment. Objective judgment now at this very moment. Unselfish action now at this very moment. Willing acceptance now at this very moment of all external events. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be one. I'm going to do it again and then just ask why. So let's type it in the chat and see what it comes up with. The strongest single answer is this: the human condition is marked by the need to govern one's own judgments, while living amidst events one does not govern. This argues that that is what Marcus would speak on because it's something he wrote about, but he also experienced. He has a quote says, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. If you are pained by an external thing, it is not this thing that disturbs you, but your own judgment about it. And it is in your power to wipe out this judgment now." Let's see if this stands true. You can be the judge of it. As I said, he was born in 121 into a wealthy family. He was nobility, of course, if he's going to be emperor. And so he was born into a lot of privilege, a lot of opportunity. His paternal grandfather, Marcus Verus, served as consul and prefect of Rome, and his family belonged near the center of Roman political life. Rome in 121 CE was during the reign of Emperor Hadrian. The Roman Empire at this time stretched across much of Europe, Africa, and the Eastern Mediterranean. And it was during some of its better years. It was wealthy, heavily structured, and complex. He was educated in a manner of elite Roman boys. They were trained in rhetoric, literature, public conduct, and philosophy. There was a lot more critical thinking going on in this education system than the education system probably you and I went through. A lot more debate and philosophy. He has some direct quotations. He says, "From his grandfather Verus, I learned good morals and the government of my temper." And from Rusticus, which I probably pronounced that wrong, he was one of his teachers. He says, "I learned to read carefully and not to be satisfied with a superficial understanding, and that my character required improvement." This is one of the hallmark lessons I've learned from him personally. Like I said, I don't think this world initially trains us to be super deep, but we're looking for the right answer, not a nuanced answer. We focus on superficial and shallow representations of ourselves and judgments on other people. But in fact, the world has a lot of depth to it. And in this time, and what I love about Marcus is that he looked for that. Now, a question that I wanted to get at, I'm super curious about, is Marcus. He wasn't a super arrogant person. He seemed quite humble, and obviously he spent a lot of time working on himself. So how could a guy who's born into wealth, he's literally the emperor, the most powerful person on the planet, how could he not be arrogant, super egotistical in that state? So the question I have to ask is, how did you not become passive from having a privileged upbringing? And when did you first realize that character isn't something you simply have, but something you have to work for? For the first question, it says the nearest evidence is the opening of Meditations, Book 1, where Marcus lists what he learned from others, which I quoted some. He adds, "From my father, modesty and a manly character." This is an interesting quote. He says, "At every hour, give your full attention to the performance of the task in hand with exact and genuine seriousness, tenderly, willingly, with justice." This question says he doesn't have a lot to speak to, so I won't pressure it, but let's see the second question. Marcus was born into the Roman elite and later adopted into the imperial house by Antoninus Pius. He was educated by tutors, exposed to rhetoric and philosophy, and brought into public office gradually. It says here that the privilege probably didn't vanish, but that it was counterweighted by a program of education and duty. So it seems to be something that he didn't immediately get over, but it was counterweighted, counterbalanced by everything he pursued, which honestly makes sense. I don't think a person can naturally just be disciplined. I don't think it's where water naturally flows. At least for me, it's something you have to work on. So we have that a little bit about his childhood. In his adolescence, Emperor Hadrian adopted Antonius Pius as his successor. And that makes sense for why he would then get in line to be emperor. Marcus was about 17 years old at that time. After this happened, Marcus moved directly into a more public life. He held offices and honors, and his future, he has a quote that I thought was cool during this period. Take care that you are not made into a Caesar. Keep yourself simple, good, pure, and serious. That was from his grandfather. And it's interesting, one, that he would get that type of feedback, but two, that they kind of understood that and had a negative idea around Caesar in their mind, that Caesar was something that wasn't simple, good, pure, and serious. It's crazy to me that the emperor, someone who is Caesar or who knows and serves and loves Caesar, would say those things about him. That's really interesting to me. I don't see how that would happen. But secondly, that it would be something that they advocate for, that you shouldn't become that Caesar. So I think it's unique, but it obviously makes sense and aligns with who Marcus Aurelius was. My question is, from childhood into adolescence, what did you learn about power from both observing it, then later in life having it? He says, from observing power early, I seem to have learned that it ought to be restrained. There's a few quotes. It says, the idea of polity in which there is the same law for all, and of all kingly government which respects most of all the freedom of the governed. Later, in possessing power himself, I learned that it can be easily deform the one who holds it, unless he watches himself closely. It notes an interesting quote from Meditation 630. Quote, take care not to be Caesarified, or died with this death. It's so fascinating to me. How could people who are socialized to believe in Caesar, who is even Caesar, he's literally an empire, he's literally the emperor, and he says, take care not to be Caesarified, that's crazy, or died with this die. It all just, I can see the connection of how it happened, but it seems so unlikely. It kind of seems too good to be true. Because nobody's like this. We're all good, but we're also all bad. Anyway, from age 17 to 40, Marcus spent about 23 years under Antoninus Pius before becoming emperor himself. And then he became emperor in 161 CE. During the period of the 23 years when he was under Pius, the empire at that time was pretty stable. It seemed that Marcus's time during his reign, the empire seemed to be a little bit more unstable. He has a few quotes from this time. Quote, from my father, I learned mildness and a mind not indifferent to public affairs. He never exhibited rudeness, lost control, or turned violent. So this is obviously 23 years. It seems that he has a good influence. His father is the emperor, and from his quotes, he ruled pretty well. And this would obviously have a big effect on Marcus himself. So the question I thought of is, what did watching someone, your father in power, and carry responsibility teach you about leadership? What do you think about leadership? Answer concise. Watching Antoninus taught that leadership is restraint, patience, and steady attention to what serves the common good. He looked to what ought to be done, not to the reputation which is got by a man's acts. What I seem to have thought about leadership from the evidence is this: rule is a moral burden before it is an honor. A ruler must remain just, self-controlled, accessible, and not to be corrupted by the office. And he has that quote, take care not to be Caesarified. Let us continue. So he goes, after his formal education, he spends 23 years under his adopted father, Antoninus, in the empire, soon to be the successor of the whole empire of itself. In 170, along the way, he got married. Marcus married Faustina the Younger, daughter of Antoninus Pius. So this guy really was his father, his mentor, his new father-in-law, his adopted father, and the emperor that made him the emperor. So this guy was a big guy for him in his life. Faustina later accompanied Marcus on his campaign, which is interesting. I don't know if that was common or not. But in 174, she received the title of Master Castorum, Mother of the Camp. And this is in light, of course, of Marcus and his many battles, the wars that he would go on to fight. Marcus and Faustina had 12 children. Many of their children died young, though, and only a small number survived to outlive Marcus. Child mortality was common in the Roman world. Even in elite households, they just didn't have the best care, the best scientific knowledge to prevent diseases and stuff. There are some quotations he speaks on this that I pulled, maybe not directly to his family, but something I infer. Speaking about loss, he says, "Loss is nothing else but change, and change is nature's delight. Consider how quickly all things are dissolved and resolved. Soon you will have forgotten everything. Soon everything will have forgotten you." Very stoic. But I have this question. What is your perspective on loss and grief in light of losing your children too? He doesn't deny, but it seems he tries to subject it to nature. Not act as if you were going to live 10,000 years. Do not let future disturb you. And so we go on. Antoninus Pius died in 161, leaving the empire to Marcus. And so he became emperor at age 40, which you're fairly old by 40. I feel like you've got a good solid foundation of who you are and maybe harder to be corrupted. But this is something interesting I didn't know. Lucius Verus, he ruled with Marcus. And this was the first time Rome formally had two emperors of equal rank at once. And the stability in the empire didn't stand all that well when he became emperor. There were major pressures that followed quickly with the war in the east against Parthia. There was pressure on the northern frontiers that they had overtaken. Overall, some increasing military and financial strain. Some quotes about this time. He says, "At dawn, when you have trouble getting out of bed, tell yourself, I have to go to work as a human being. You were born to work together, or do you prefer to lie down and do nothing?" I get the sense, as I was reading about this time of his life, that being emperor wasn't all sunshine and roses. Obviously, you're fighting wars, you have a lot of pressure, not only from other people, but it seemed that he had a lot of pressure on himself to uphold high morals and to do a good job. So the question I came up with, how do you improve without hating yourself? Dealing with the pressure other people put on you, put on yourself. I need this advice. And Stoics, they don't seem to be the most optimistic people, at least lighthearted. They seem to be more serious. And I'm naturally that way. Some people are, some people aren't. But I want to find a good balance. I don't want to be like up in the clouds, but I also don't want to be so serious that I forget to smile, because life is deep and it's sad and it's hard, but also like at the same time, maybe not. Here's what he says. Don't make improvement depend on self-contempt, which I think is like self-hatred. In Marcus terms, correct the judgment and act, not your worth as a human being. At every hour, give thyself to the business in hand with perfect and simple dignity. So concisely, be strict with the action, not cruel to the self. That's interesting. So you kind of separate the action from the person. Condemn the behavior, not the being. Now we get into some of the stories of his life where there's actually more sources beyond just his own. Parthian War. From 161 to 166, the Parthian Empire at the time was Rome's major eastern rival, and so this was no joke. Rome's eastern rival Parthia moved quickly. This is interesting, so it seems that Parthia chose to attack right during transition in power. The war had two main phases. First, Rome recovered Armenia. Then Roman armies pushed deeper into Mesopotamia, overrunning major territory and eventually striking the Parthian capital region. The war ended in 166 as a Roman victory. They defeated the army, but they brought back with them a plague. So it was like back to back. End of war, start a plague. It says the record doesn't give a memoir in which Marcus says war taught me these three things, but there are some reflections written during the military campaigning and amid repeated crises. He has this quote, "Of human life the time is a point, and life is a warfare and a stranger's sojourn. What then is that which is able to conduct a man one thing and only one? Philosophy." So we have the Eastern War and then the plague. After 167, there was another war in the north. Germanic and other tribal groups pressed against the Roman borders. At this point, too, in 169, Lucius Verus, the other emperor, died, and so Marcus alone had the kingdom to rule. He says about obstacles at this time that impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. I don't even know what that means. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Okay, so problems advance action, and then what stands in the way becomes the way. So your problem is the way to go. I don't really know what that means, but maybe that you shouldn't see your problems as like things that stand in the way, but rather you move forward by going through them. That's interesting. Something I've never understood is what he's motivated by. Because he seems to be like a Boy Scout, honestly. Like there are some people that are great. That's why I like Batman. Because he's good, but he's also relatable. Like, I don't think people are black and white. They're usually black and they try to be white. So my question is, what is your motivation for life? What kept you going to try to choose the good? Did you suffer from temptation? I'm not sure what it will give me. Thinking. Man, this answer sucks. It says the record does not allow a confident answer about a single private motivation, but the clearest one he states is to do the work proper to a human being and to act for others. As for temptation, the record does not give a full confession, but it does suggest recurring struggles with comfort, vanity, and the corruptions of office. Or have I been made for this, to lie in the bedcloths and keep myself warm? Meditations 5:1. So it seems that he had a struggle. Obviously, anyone would if you're born in luxury and you see the best that the world has to offer at that time, and you're also going out to fight wars, probably living in tents. You're seeing everyone die around you. Those are pretty hard extremes. And obviously, he spent his life trying to pursue the better alternative, to go to work, to be honest, to be a moral man. But what I can't grasp is why. Because there's the alternative, something comfortable. And in my experience, that usually overtakes the hard work. If it's unnecessary and it's like hard, the natural tendency is to avoid that and just be comfortable in your own bed. So maybe he just had a lot of self-belief. Seems to, but doesn't. What is interesting, though, is we know that Meditations, it was written for himself. He had to hit his own motives. It was written to himself, by himself. It wasn't for anything else. It wasn't even written as a public book. So, obviously, that is the clearest picture we have into his mind. So we've got wars, plagues. After the Northern War, there was a little blip in time, but it comes back to 175, so 6 years after he becomes the sole empire. And there's a scandal that goes on. This dude pops up of Cassius, who self-declares as emperor. So there's this huge revolt. Some people are following him, and there's a rumor that Marcus Aurelius is dead. And obviously the history is blurry, so I don't know what happened, but the revolt ended quickly, and Cassius was killed. But it does give a reflection, despite the incoherent storyline, that obviously there's some tension going. If there's enough inconsistency and enough things not in order for a whole revolt to come out and a dude to basically self declare as emperor, there are some things going wrong in the empire for sure. Another thing, at this exact same time in 175, Stina, his wife, dies. She accompanied Marcus on campaign. We know this, and we know that Marcus had her deified after her death. He lived not too long after Faustina died. Commodus was one of their children, and his only surviving son that outlived him. He was raised into imperial office during Marcus's lifetime, and he later actually succeeded Marcus as sole emperor after he died. Marcus, in his final years, he continued to campaign. He spent his whole life in the battlefield, I swear, in managing the northern wars, and he died in 180 while on campaign. He says it simply in Meditations: while you live, while it is in your power, be good. The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Now, personally, there's one quote that has made a profound impact on me personally, and I want to share it with you. It actually led me to get married, which is unique. But I think it's true, and it can apply to a lot of circumstances and choices that we have to go through and choose in our life, because we don't know. Maybe the grass is greener. Maybe there will be a better opportunity that will come up. It's hard to pick through emotional decisions where you can't use reason or logic to weigh out all the odds. But this is what he says. But remember how long thou hast been putting off these things, and how often thou hast received an opportunity from the gods, and yet dost not use it. Thou must now at last perceive of what universe thou art a part, and of what administrator of the universe thy existence is in a flux, and that a limit of the time is fixed for thee, which if thou dost not use for the clearing away the clouds from thy mind, it will go and thou wilt go, and it will never return. It gives a sense that we're a part of something grander than ourselves. The Romans, I don't know what he believed. They were mostly polytheistic. But in the same, even if you don't even have beliefs, there seems to be a pattern. Obviously, we are the only conscious beings that have a life, that are able to reason not through instinct, but through some stream of morals and consciousness. And that's unique. And that allows our lives, it makes them more complex. We deal more with just survival. We deal with quality and meaning. However you find that to be organized, or however you define that in your life, that practical base foundation layer is the same. And he says that there is an order to it, that someone out there, the gods, is the administrator of all of it. And whether you believe that or not, the base foundation of what we can establish is that that's our circumstance. We have been given a life that is more complex than a usual animal. How we have to deal with morals and with meaning and with good and bad, judging all of that, choosing how we live our life. And that's the question at hand, that choice. What do we choose? And I appreciate that he says, and I related to that because I felt that I had some things that I've been putting off, that I knew were to be good, but I was still doing bad habits. And I love his wording. He says, that a time given for us to clear away the clouds from our mind. And if we don't use that time, it will go and thou wilt go, and it will never return. We're blessed with opportunity. Opportunity, I've come to believe in more recent years that it's not something we're handed, but it's something we seek, we find, and we choose to take or leave. It's not like every day I'm getting job offers and thousands of dollars, but I look at my surveilling circumstance, see an evolving world, an evolving marketplace, and I think, based on what I want to do, what are the opportunities at hand? And from that, you have to pick. Do I take that opportunity? Is that something I'll invest in? And it's true that I found if I don't, those opportunities pass. I break up with someone, they move on, they get married, whatever. I don't get that job. By pursuing something, it comes at the expense of any other thing. And I added one other quote that I love that teaches me from Marcus how you can go about choosing whatever various opportunities you want in your life. Given that we're human, we're conscious, we have to deal with these things that make life more complex. How do we choose how to live life? And this is it. I love it because it doesn't take a claim. It can be applied to anyone, any worldview. He does it by breathing out my breath into that element out of which I daily draw it in. Think about it. I don't want to take too much away from any analysis you come from it. I'll say it one more time. Breathing out my breath into that element out of which I daily draw it in. And because I don't want to obscure your analysis, I won't add mine. He says it himself, simply enough. And it is his words, not mine. But thank you. That is Marcus Aurelius, ladies and gentlemen. Someone who has withstood the test of time, but not only that, for good reason. He's not infamous. He's just famous. He had an approach that was stoic, more serious. He worked hard, and I think there's something to be learned there. So hopefully his perspective gives you some new things to think about. I know that I didn't ask the best questions, and an answer is as only good as the question. So that is why I'm asking you to comment down below questions of your life. You don't have to be too personal, but you can add some generic context because the better the question, the better the answer. And I'll come back on here. I'll put those questions into the AI version of Marcus Aurelius that I made. I'll go back into the avatar to make it a little better. I've got some things I need to work on with it. But then should be great. We can get some advice from him. And last thing, I ask that you subscribe. It's the biggest way you can help me. And truly, it means a lot. And with that, thank you. Have a great day.